Hey, Pastor, why do I need to come to church to worship? Can I just worship God wherever I am and by myself? These are some questions that I bump into sometimes. You know what? Yes, you can worship God by yourself. You can worship God in other places besides just here in church or in a sanctuary like where I'm sitting right now. It is possible. In fact, it's even a good thing. But the real question, I think, comes down to, do I have to gather with a group in order to worship? Like, do I have to go to church? Is that kind of the big question that I bump into? And when I am in conversation with people on these lines, the reason that I tend to answer about the importance of corporate worship together as a group, is that it is intended to be a communal thing. Worship is a time when we gather together and as a group, collectively, we are in a conversation that goes back and forth between us and God. Now, this is something that I talk with my students about fairly commonly as we talk about the different aspects of worship and how it really is that back and forth conversation. We are offering to God our praise. We are offering to God moments of confession. We are offering to God many different things in the different aspects of worship. But then God is speaking to us too. God speaks to us through the reading of the scriptures. God speaks to us in the announcement of the forgiveness of sins. God speaks to us through the sermon. God speaks to us in many different ways, and God comes to us through the sacraments when we practice those together. So is individual worship of God and time spent with God a good thing and a positive thing? Absolutely. Don't ever quit that. That is a great thing. But worship that we do together is a good thing too. And here's my last point when I'm speaking to people on this account. We can't offer forgiveness to ourselves. I often say, I ask, who is the most difficult person to forgive? And it's usually ourselves, to offer ourselves forgiveness. And at least here in the Lutheran Church, this is why the idea of corporate confession and forgiveness, we call it the brief order of confession and forgiveness within the liturgy here in my congregation. Maybe a different congregation calls it something a little bit different, but corporately together we confess our brokenness, the sin, that which we are aware of and that which even escapes our grasp or escapes our ability to remember. And then is the announcement of the forgiveness of sins. Now, as part of my role as pastor, I do that in worship every week. I announce that. So I don't actually hear it announced to me very often. Just within my setting, I'm leading worship pretty much every week. But in the rare instances when I get to hear that announcement of forgiveness, it strikes me just how important and how deep that is to be reminded of, through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, through the love of God and God's mercy, we are offered forgiveness. And I think that's something that we need to do for one another. And that's why we need more than one person together when we worship in that way.